empowering women's voices in feminist literature mean for men?
So thank you, Monica. And I think more than whatever was we were introduced with, we should have been introduced as 3 authors who were about to take flight. Women's voices for men. So, for a long time, literature has been dominated by male authors, and it is a very natural human tendency to glorify self. So when I write, I have this tendency of writing about every kind of literature has been, about the glorification of men and women the same. And with due course of time, we improved, improvised, emerged, evolved, and things changed. Now it's pretty different. But women's writing, and actually a lot of change happened when women's writing evolved and took some kind of, tried to take center stage, tried to seek limelight. And women's writing comes from that very typical area of being woman, which is that we are very inclusive.
We are very
inclusive. We don't think just for ourselves, because we are conditioned like that. We grow up, we are made to think not just for ourselves but for everybody. So when it is a woman's story, the story includes not just the woman as the great doer, the great achiever, but also the peripheral sides and how the spotlight lends to each and every person who is trying to make the woman's journey or the protagonist's journey like something extra, something beautiful, something worth talking about. So when it comes to women's storytelling, it does include gorgeous men, it does include wonderful achievers, and at the same time, it does justice to a lot of men who are trapped in that aspect of patriarchy, which introduced men as macho, dominating, that ideal man as macho, dominating, who would try to, dominate more than leading a life of equality. So when you say men don't cry, they are immediately under pressure. When you say मर्द को दर्द नहीं होता, and you make that big, men immediately come into the pressure of living by it. Because if you don't, then you are effeminate, right?
Yeah.
So when women started writing, a lot of those codes started coming. And that is a very big contribution for which we can take credit.
Okay. So we can have some bit of a clap. She was a very good point. So I think men should be more happy in this scenario. Yeah. Okay. So Nandita, my next question for you would be, what is the role and contribution of feminist literature in shaping our society? On the other hand, would you agree with today's definition of women empowerment? Because we hear this word empowerment for the longest time, and I think it has too many connotations. At least for me personally, it has too many connotations. But having said that, I will let her speak. Yeah.
So I think the first part of the question has already been answered by Koral. I'll rather focus on the second part, which is what do I make out of today's definition of women empowerment? Do I agree? Do I not? And the answer honestly is yes and no. Where I agree is the whole bit that Koral you kind of made a mention to, where there was patriarchy or there was a gender stereotype, there were roles assigned, and we look at empowerment as a step up to break out of those stereotypes which have traditionally been assigned to us, roles which partly come naturally and partly have been kind of just given to us on a platter, and we've had to align to those societal role expectations. So breaking out of that and stepping into your power and connecting with your aspirations and figuring out what really takes me one step higher. To that extent, I agree with the definition of empowerment. I want to focus more on where I disagree, because till this extent, everyone knows what empowerment is. I think this is a very narrow and kind of a unidimensional way of looking at empowerment, where you are smash, breaking something and stepping up into a social narrative. So as a coach, I work a lot with women leaders, and especially, senior leaders who are in their 50s, mid-50s, who are not necessarily eyeing for a CEO role. There's a lot of pressure for them to break the glass ceiling, because only then are we empowered. So the choice to step down and take life easy doesn't seem to be with women anymore. So 50 years back, we were conditioned to be people who would sacrifice and keep our families ahead of us. Today there is a reverse pressure of how do I own up my own space, and if I don't, then I'm actually labeled as oppressed. One beautiful example that comes to my mind is a picture I saw very recently of 3 women in uniforms. So there was a female major general who was from the army, there is an air marshal, and there is a navy commander, all in their uniforms looking wonderful. And the tagline was, is there a better representation of women empowerment? And absolutely yes, because these are high achievers, women who have made a place and a name for themselves in a typical man-run organization. Would you say the same for women who chose to give up their careers and support their husbands, who wear uniforms and who go on to become major generals or air chief marshals? Do you look at them as empowered at all, or do you look at them as losers? Very simply put, the social narrative is so exacting that we believe that they played the second fiddle and hence they have not achieved anything. And here is where I think women are robbed of what real empowerment is. And empowerment is, I think, stepping into your power to make your own choices. Whether you want to run a family, whether you want to run a business, whether you want to get into a job, or you just want to, explore writing like me and Smita, right? Without worrying about what are the societal expectations. And I think this is, one dimension to women empowerment that I think is very important, because then we are just caught in a narrative that doesn't sit well, but we just have to play along because the pressure is larger than the small voice within. So I hope I made sense. It's a controversial take, but I hope I made sense to everyone here.
Right. Thank you so much. Just a quick word. Like I said, I've been moderating a lot of sessions which revolve around women's empowerment for donkey's years now, and I'm pretty old, so I don't know why we have to justify each time that we have to be empowered. I personally feel that our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers were empowered also in their roles. They ruled the roles. So in their measures, they were empowered. So the definition of empowerment changed eventually, and it also depends on your own personal self, what it means to you for whatever change required for you. So having said that, Smita is also a TEDx speaker. So one very young, so when you go home, do listen to her. I listen to her, very interesting. So this question is very interesting because one so young must answer this, and I'm really agog to listen to her. The pressure to be perfect. The pressure to be perfect is more when one is a woman. Do you agree? To what extent this point of view influences the portrayal of feminine characters in literature?
Monica, this is So I do think it's as interesting a question as is debatable, and truth is bitter. But I do agree. I think there is too much societal pressure on women, as females we are supposed to be an embodiment of parallel of virtues and sacrifice. We've seen mythologies. We may have read mythology, but everyone has seen Ramayana and Mahabharata, right? What do we remember Sita for? She was a warrior in her own right. It was not an easy thing to give away all the wealth and and follow her husband for something which it was not compulsory for her. And she did sacrifice. And because of that one factor, why do we remember Sita? Because she was a virtuous wife and she sacrificed and she followed her husband. Are we doing justice to Sita? Come to the contemporary period. We all watch television. How do we portray women in daily soaps? So it's the middle of the night, the woman is fighting some personal crisis, she is also doing some firefighting at home, yet she is wearing this heavy sari with fine jewellery, not a strand of hair out of place, the bindi is shining red. What is this? This is nothing but society's portal. There is too much of burden, right? And fiction is nothing. So TV is also fiction, right? It's nothing but a genesis that we see in the reality of today. So because of this pressure, the portrayal of women in literature is also done in a very stereotypical manner. Now, of course, the world is changing and we can all see in the panel here that we are all women writers. But traditionally, when literature was written, most of the writers were males. And at the risk of sounding controversial, I must say that as women, we are more inclusive. We write about both males and females. But when it comes to men, they write mostly about males, and females are supporting characters. So we all spoke about empowerment. By the way, I am also an empowerment coach, besides being an executive coach. Empowerment is not about representation. When we talk about books, women are represented. But it is more as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter, as a supporting character. When it comes to her aspirations, her own career, it seems like women does nothing but look after the home. And that's the portal we unfortunately have, and that is what we need to change. I am an avid reader. My dad was in the army, so I grew up reading a lot. And I picked up foreign contemporary literatures. And there were examples of women who were portrayed as very ambitious. And I was like, wow. In fact, that's why I chose the career. I chose to be in the business side as a consultant. I chose what I did because I got influenced by the portrayal of women I saw in literature there. But when I started reading Indian writers, unfortunately, I could not find a similar portrayal of women. It was all like, she's the silent partner that, sacrifice karne wali mother, sacrifice karne wali bahu, beti. And that was when I was very sure that when I write my book, I'm not going to go with a conventional female character. My book is going to be about a woman who is unconventional, for whom career matters more than family, not when equal. I wanted to set a higher benchmark. And that's what I opted for. And that's how the Prize to Love came about. So the narrative of women is changing. Of course, the pressure to be perfect is there, and that has influenced the stereotypical portrait. But I
will ask the question to the audience. What you said is very good, and it's related to your point. If I
yes, sure.
Sorry for cutting it. Very quickly, there are a lot of guys here. Welcome. Are you here because you were forced to come here, or you want to be here? Yes? Don't feel shy. Quickly answer. How many? This question is for the men. How many of you feel that our women need to be empowered, or they are already empowered? Manchekai, you know na? So come on, let's have an answer. Don't feel shy. Don't feel scared. Anybody can answer? Yes or no?
They are holding power.
Yes. Clap. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Okay. Koral has all heavy questions, so we prepared for a nice answer. Koral, Indian mythology has been called regressive by the popular media. How would you react to this? I mean, it's a serious point that Indian mythology has been called regressive. So what do you say about that? Because Indian mythology is really happening right now. It's a big time in literature also.
Yes, Monica, Indian mythology has been called regressive, and there is a reason why it has been called regressive. We have for a long period of time seen the women in Indian mythology as extremely peripheral, who contribute nothing but tears and because of some foolishness that happens through them, great wars are caused and people die. So, a lot of things have come from mythology where you perceive that in God's world, mythology is largely religious literature also because of the presence of devas and devis. So in God's world, women come, do something, trouble happens, problem happens, war happens, people die. So women is the problem. So if every problem has a solution, you want to solve the problem, correct the woman. So the entire thing about women, that aise mat baito, aise mat chalo, the entire thing comes from there. Now the thing is, we have to understand that these epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vedas, Puranas, these were not commercial fictions. Right? They were not, the purpose was not entertainment. These were written by great philosophers with the purpose of passing on certain life learning and values to the generations to come, and they wrote it with the purpose that these life learnings will repeat in every generation and will be relevant all across. So, as time passed, these narratives got stripped of a lot of things, primarily being philosophy. We stopped understanding the philosophy of it. Largely, the reason of that is the desanskritization of the texts. We had many regional languages, all languages their own version. Every time a version was written, the person who wrote added his creativity. His politics also went into the writing. Certain stories changed, certain words changed. Use of words also added some kind of politics to it. The moment when the purpose of literature is philosophy, and everything, each and every event, each and every presence character is philosophical, is metaphorical, and the purpose is philosophy, and you strip philosophy out of it. It is like this room with bricks, without the cement, without the color, without the everything that is decorating it, right? It will look regressive. So we didn't try to understand the philosophy of the stories. We just tried to look at the stories just as they were, and they hit back on our face, sounding, and people of course use those stories. They use those stories in their favor. When men were in power, they used those stories to justify that, देखो, औरतें सीखो, यहाँ पे सीता obedient है, सीता obedient. She was the one who said, I'll go with you to the forest. She was the one who said that go bring the golden deer. She was the one who said that Lakshmi Banami aisi, I want to go and give the food to the beggar. She was the one who said to Hanuman that I will not go with you. Why should I run? I am not a king. Deceiver was Ravan. Why should I run to the king? Sita disobedient. Sita obedient, come on. She was the most disobedient one, and she had a mind of her own.
But then you said a point that in mythology, it's the women who caused problems and caused all the wars. What were the men doing? Why couldn't they think for themselves? So why blame only the women for that? Point, clap. Need some noise, thank you. Okay, so Nandita, this is a mandatory question. So please listen carefully. Her answer. What would be, this question is for the men. How many of you feel that our women need to be empowered or they are already empowered? Manchekai, you know na? So let's have an answer. Don't feel shy, don't feel scared. Anybody can answer? Yes or no?
They are holding power.
Yes. Clap. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Okay. Koral has all heavy questions, so we prepared for a nice answer. Koral, Indian mythology has been called regressive by the popular media. How would you react to this? I mean, it's a serious point that Indian mythology has been called regressive. So what do you say about that? Because Indian mythology is really happening right now. It's big time in literature also.
Yes, Monica, Indian mythology has been called regressive, and there is a reason why it has been called regressive. We have for a long period of time seen the women in Indian mythology as extremely peripheral, who contribute nothing but tears, and because of some foolishness that happens through them, great wars are caused and people die. So if you, a lot of things have come from mythology where you perceive that in God's world, mythology is largely religious literature also because of the presence of devas and devis. So in God's world, women come, do something, trouble happens, problem happens, war happens, people die. So women is the problem. So if every problem has a solution, you want to solve the problem, correct the woman. So the entire thing about women, that aise mat baito, aise mat chalo, the entire thing comes from there. Now the thing is, we have to understand that these epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vedas, Puranas, these were not commercial fictions. Right? They were not, the purpose was not entertainment. These were written by great philosophers with the purpose of passing on certain life learning and values to the generations to come, and they wrote it with the purpose that these life learnings will repeat in every generation and will be relevant all across. So, as time passed, these narratives got stripped of a lot of things, primarily being philosophy. We stopped understanding the philosophy of it. Largely, the reason of that is the desanskritization of the texts. We had many regional languages, all languages their own version. Every time a version was written, the person who wrote added his creativity. His politics also went into the writing. Certain stories changed, certain words changed. Use of words also added some kind of politics to it. The moment when the purpose of literature is philosophy, and everything, each and every event, each and every presence character is philosophical, is metaphorical, and the purpose is philosophy, and it stripped philosophy out of it. It is like this room with bricks, without the cement, without the color, without the everything that is decorating it, right? It will look regressive. So we didn't try to understand the philosophy of the stories. We just tried to look at the stories just as they were, and they hit back on our face.
So this question is for the men. How many of you feel that our women need to be empowered or they are already empowered? Manjekai, you know na? So come on, let's have an answer. Don't feel shy, don't feel scared. Anybody can answer? Yes or no?
They are holding power.
Yes. Clap. Power. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Okay. Koral has all heavy questions, so we prepared for a nice answer. Koral, Indian mythology has been called regressive by the popular media. How would you react to this? It's a serious point that Indian mythology has been called regressive. So what do you say about that? Because Indian mythology is really happening right now. It's a big time in literature also.
Yes, Monica, Indian mythology has been called regressive, and there is a reason why it has been called regressive. We have for a long period of time seen the women in Indian mythology as extremely peripheral, who contribute nothing but tears, and because of some foolishness that happens through them, great wars are caused and people die. So, a lot of things have come from mythology where you perceive that in God's world, mythology is largely religious literature also because of the presence of devas and devis. So in God's world, women come, do something, trouble happens, problem happens, war happens, people die. So women is the problem. So if every problem has a solution, you want to solve the problem, correct the woman. So the entire thing about women, that aise mat baito, aise mat chalo, the entire thing comes from there. Now the thing is, we have to understand that these epics, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vedas, Puranas, these were not commercial fictions. Right? They were not, the purpose was not entertainment. These were written by great philosophers with the purpose of passing on certain life learning and values to the generations to come, and they wrote it with the purpose that these life learnings will repeat in every generation and will be relevant all across. So, as time passed, these these narratives got stripped of a lot of things, primarily being philosophy. We stopped understanding the philosophy of it. Largely, the reason of that is the desanskritization of the text. We had many regional languages, all languages their own version. Every time a version was written, the person who wrote added his creativity. His politics also went into the writing, certain stories changed, certain words changed, use of words also added some kind of politics to it. The moment when the purpose of literature is philosophy, and everything, each and every event, each and every presence character is philosophical, is metaphorical, and the purpose is philosophy, and you strip philosophy out of it. It is like this room with bricks, without the cement, without the color, without the everything that is decorating it, right? It will look regressive. So we didn't try to understand the philosophy of the stories. We just tried to look at the stories just as they were, and they hit back on our face, sounding, and people of course use those stories. They use those stories in their favor. When men were in power, they used those stories to justify that, देखो, औरतें सीखो, यहाँ पे सीता obedient है, सीता obedient. She was the one who said, I'll go with you to the forest. She was the one who said that go bring the golden deer. She was the one who said that Lakshmi Kanami aisi, I want to go and bring the food to the beggar. She was the one who said to Hanuman that I will not go with you. Why should I run? I am not a king. Deceiver was Ravan. Why should I run to the king? Sita disobedient. Sita obedient, come on. She was the most disobedient one, and she had a mind of her own.
But then you said a point that in mythologies, the women who caused problems and caused all the wars, what were the men doing? Why couldn't they think for themselves? So why blame only the women for that? Point, clap. Make some noise, thank you. Okay, so Nandita, this is a mandatory question, so please listen carefully. Her answer. What would be your message to readers, especially the young audience here, on how to empower themselves? It's a mandatory question. You just might get some hints and suggestions from her.
So, wish there was some cookbook recipe, some kind of a straightforward answer, a 3-step process to empower and stay empowered. Unfortunately, there is no such shortcut to empowerment. But I think I'll just connect with what I said earlier. Empowerment is about keeping the power of making choices. That is step 1. And being aware of the consequences of these choices. And how do you live those consequences with courage and dignity and self-respect, even when those choices are not really working out sometimes. And I connect this with, the protagonist, a female protagonist in my debut novel. The name of the book is 2 Inches Taller. And it's the story of a young corporate executive who gets married to an army officer and chooses to give up on her career on the spur of the moment. Now, while the decision has been taken, once she lands up in cantonment and the loneliness and lack of identity and absolute erosion of self-belief and self-worth hits her, how does she live that choice? Because the choice has already been made. So a knee-jerk reaction is dump everything and go back and recreate the life, which is what we see very often. And that's a choice. I'm not judging this choice at all. Each one is free to make their choices. And the other choice is, I've done it for a purpose, I've done it for a reason. Can I really bend over backwards and make it happen? And that making it happen is a very painful process because your mind will drag you in different directions. One part will just say dump and run and just figure out happiness and what really gives you contentment. And the other would be, hang on, hold your horses, let's see. So any choice that you make, whether it's a career choice or a personal choice or a relationship choice, I think it's one, having a little bit idea about what are the consequences and do I have the wherewithal, do I have the grit to live those choices with dignity. Yeah? And if you stay in that space, then you are empowered because the power is with you all the time. How well does one define empowerment? As soon as you give the power to society or someone else or a larger narrative that is blinding you, you've chosen to disrobe yourself of empowerment. So I think stepping into empowerment is a little easier than staying there. Yeah. And for our younger audience who are stepping into a world where you will be making independent individual decisions, some of which may work, some of which may not, I think just having that resilience to trust yourself. And one word is dignity. Can I live my choices with dignity? इतना ही ज्ञान दे सकती हूँ आज तो.
A very small point to add to this is that I personally feel it is our youngsters. You need to step up and empower yourselves, your mothers in the house. How many of us support our mothers in the house? We are watching them struggle each day with some reason or the other. It's your job to empower your mothers, your sisters, and each other. Does it choose? What?
So, women always need to sacrifice for whatever path they choose, like home, career, family, parenthood, or even themselves. So my question is, do you think they always sacrifice more than men ever do? And are those sacrifices like really necessary, and why?
Who would you like to answer? The question I understood was she said that do women have to sacrifice more than the men? And second part?
Are those sacrifices really necessary?
Are those sacrifices really necessary? It's a very good question which is applicable to each one of us. At least all women. And I do feel very strongly for this question. I would let you answer. I can answer that.
So again, maybe my take will be different from the popular opinion here. And as soon as I choose to believe that as a woman I am the only one sacrificing, I put myself in an absolute victim position. And I don't like being there at all. Having said that, don't men compromise? And I mean, it's easy for us to say that I'm sacrificing, I'm compromising. That's only one side of the story. So I wouldn't really label anyone more or less here. I think life is a lot about sacrifices, life is a lot about compromises, it's never a straight path. And let's be honest, we are all trying to make it work. There could be some situations, of course, where one partner contributes or sacrifices more, but I don't think there is a rule. I don't want to see a rule for myself.
You have a question?
Yes, can I add something to what Nandita said? So to answer your question, women have to sacrifice. It is required, but they should not be the only one to sacrifice. It's a give and take. Life is a 50-50. You have to sacrifice sometime and you have to push back sometime. And that is the way how the world should work.
Good evening to the lovely trio out there on the dais, and Monica ma'am, you look star.
Thank you.
And my question for the trio is that characters tend to play and take a role within each of our lives. Has any of the character or any of the protagonists have closely, driven you away and has taken a personal call in your personal life? I would like to know that.
Personal life?
Your own life, and I'm talking about that.
No, what's the question?
The question is any character which they are writing on their fiction, novel, run and stuff like that, has it taken a toll in your life?
I write mythology. Okay, right now I'm writing mythology, Indian mythology. And I heard a Sufi saint lecturing and saying that we all are manifestations of the Almighty. We don't really exist. हम सब images हैं. उनका सोच है. We all are someone's thinking. And जैसे वो सोचते जा रहे हैं, हमारी जिंदगियाँ आगे बढ़ रही हैं. If I have to trust this, then God is a writer. And the way God writes is, at times when I am writing, okay, I was writing Rasya, which is my third novel, a love triangle between Bharatanatyam dancers. A very intense love triangle. Now there are moments when I want, there's husband-wife and the student. Husband-wife, both teachers, the student. There are times when I feel that the student's need or demand for the teacher, the male teacher, is so intense and she deserves. But as a writer, I can't give the man to this girl because then the greater story will get spoiled. Bhagwan bhi wahi kar rahe hain. We all have our needs. We all want certain things. But God sitting somewhere there is trying to understand what works in the greater perspective. और वही हो रहा है हमारे साथ.
Do you want us to wind up or 5 minutes more, 10 minutes more? Wind up? Alright. We will wind up. Who said that? I'll quickly wind up before she winds us out.
I have something small to
Add on this? Okay, yeah. So, you know what, I wish to thank you for being here, and I'm not saying it as a regular line that you've been a good audience, a great audience. Thank you for coming in the first place. And being interactive in whatever little measures you could be. Tomorrow morning I have another session at 10 o'clock. Koral Dasgupta's husband is going to be there, Mr. Tuhin Sinha, with a very, very interesting topic, and I want you youngsters to be there. We've got to recognize Tuhin Sinha from all, he comes almost every third, fourth day on times now. So please be there for it, because that particular session is going to be a real eye-opener. Of course, I'm hosting it, so you have to open your eyes. But he is going to give us some very interesting information, so please be there at 10 o'clock.
Thank you so much for calling him my husband.
Why?
Because for a long time I have heard that I am his wife.
Oops. This is a woman empowerment bit. Oops. You want to say a quick word? What's the word?
Actually, I wanted to ask that, like, you are talking about feminist literature, no? So, like now, like at a ground scenario, I wanted to ask that, now what's the situation? Is there any male who is talking about feminist literature right now? Like in this age?
See, literature happens from life. And even fiction is not completely imagination. It is history, in some way or the other. And I have known many men who have appeared in my life, who have made a lot of changes, they have taken a lot of decisions in my favor, leaving aside their interests. And those men exist, and those men are increasing. There are also very, very regressive men who are trying to push themselves, and there is a world which is opposing them. This is also the truth of today. I can tell you that she was talking about my husband, Tuhin Sinha, right? Probably you guys may have seen him on TV, but Sinha is not his surname. His father is Amarendra Kumar. His mother is Samira Sinha.
So what's your point that he's chosen to...
He has chosen, he writes Tuhin Sinha, Tuhin Amar Sinha. He has his father's and mother's name both.
That's nice.
Yes.
That's a good point.
Things do change, and things are changing.